Hey everyone, welcome to your daily update for BTC and SOL. Starting with liquidity, you can definitely tell it's a weekend. The BTC liquidation chart pretty much just looks like it's been painted on with random spots and has no facts behind it whatsoever. But that's what you get on weekends. Um, it is still showing a range, which is sort of down to that 111k and up to that sort of 118k. With your main sort of clusters being between 114 and 117. So, and that's realistic, there's plenty of liquidity floating around in those areas. Sol's actually showing a very different story. It's looking bearish, so a lot more liquidity to take if it was to go to the upside. Whereas people just don't seem to be chasing the long, so it's almost as if they just do not have any faith of it going any higher. And 247 is basically the absolute top fib target we have based on any kind of horizontal structure. So whether the world knows that and they've decided that this is enough and they're not going to keep chasing it, or maybe they're just waiting for SOL to do a retrace before they take their entry. It's a bit hard to tell, but definitely it looks like there's more incentive for it to go to the upside, and it also kind of explains why it's just not going down the way you'd sort of expect it to, because it's just inefficient to really do so. We did have that little pullback to like 236 in the last sort of 12-ish hours, but yeah, it's really, you'd expect it to come down to sort of around 228 as a minimum retrace for some of the moves. But yeah, maybe it's just not there yet. And if it does start to run up a bit more, people will long it. They'll chase that, and when they do, it might then complete any moves that it's got pending to the downside. But it does look very bullish. So if we look at the 7-day, 7 days is a different story, obviously, because people have a lot of longs that are still open, and they weren't shorting it as much. So 7 days is plenty of liquidity to take to the downside, but it's just interesting. People are not opening new longs. So BTC's the same. It's really imbalanced to the downside. So if they went up and swept something like that 117 area, you could almost see one of those scam wicks result from that, and then just go down and grab as much as they could to the bottom side, because it's got plenty of liquidity all the way down to sort of like 108. So on SOL 7-day, the same numbers to the upside, really, about 247, slightly into the 250s, and then that first main cluster goes down to that 228 number, which is the number that's kind of on the cards there and makes the most sense if they're going to do sort of like a shallow retrace. And any further than that, there's stuff to grab, but it's the way it's behaving at the moment, it's only really doing minimum obligation retraces and bounces. So we look at the 30-day. Well, there's a lot of 30-day positions that have been open, longs. They haven't been taken. They may never be taken. It's markets do move to liquidity, but they only do it for the purpose of opening really large positions into the liquidations with very little spread. So, if everyone has got to the point where their positions are open, their bags are packed, then maybe we just don't see it. But the charts are still pointing to a lot of rejections that could happen. And the upside numbers are basically the same. Not a lot past 118, 119 on BTC. Plenty to take all the way down to sort of like 105. And for SOL, it's still sort of that 249 to 250 to the upside. And those 30-day positions, a lot of them have been open down to 200 or lower. So, but yeah, like I say, it's we've got structure to do it. It's just a case of whether they do it. And the way structure ends up getting left behind is things like trends, which basically means that if price spends a long time at a higher price, it will build a trend, and by building that trend, particularly if it has a shallow pullback, then that trend becomes support, and then that stops the horizontal targets from being reached. So it's it's looking bullish. Okay, let's have a look at our short-term fun and games. So it's just been As you can see, it's been building up some 100x leverage, which is the red stuff, and then it's just been going, taking it, and then heading off to the next level. And as it goes up, you can see people just open the positions again. Seem to have infinite money to want to get wiped out, but this is what it is. And then SOL's just it's just basically just bobbing between the close leverage and not really doing too much. Like it is developing more to the downside, so you're starting to see this density coming in here at about 230, and likewise it's developing that same sort of density to the upside. So it's just baking cake, as we call it. And the hardest thing about figuring out the direction from this point is that, well, whichever way it faces, it's got a nice meal of cake it can go eat. So makes it a little bit harder to figure out where it's going to go first. But let's have a look at these charts. Okay. So SOLBTC Strength on the daily with about 2 hours to go is not going to move the trend unless it closes to the upside. So at the moment it's down. It wouldn't take much because it's in such a tight range. It wouldn't take much to close it to the upside. It changes so much if it does. Like if we hard close to the upside, that level, which is an origin level around that 206.75, if it hard closes that, then it can easily just bounce up and smack into the next trend, and then keep the process of trying to move up. It'll probably reject off the trend, but it wouldn't have to reject down any lower than this hard closed level. So it's kind of doing everything, or has been doing everything possible with how it closes, just perfectly over the levels, to just bounce and bounce and bounce and just keep on going. But it does look like it is now actually starting to gather some weakness. So if this was to close blue, it introduces a trend, and then it can still use that trend to try and bounce and move up to the next level. But if there isn't much of a wick on the bottom of this candle when it closes, so it'd be running from here. So you can see how important this close actually is. If it comes down just a little bit, down to say 206.22, or anything kind of around that 206.46, anything around that level, it could open on the wrong side of the trend and underneath the origin level. It hasn't hard closed it, bounces off the backside of the trend. It's never hard closed any of these ones below, so it could come all the way back to this other trend for a retest, and then you'd see a pullback, in SOL overall, and then this would just simply be a deviation of the trend or a sweep of the trend. And if you get these kind of deviations or sweeps, you normally do see continuation and and more downside. So it's at a really important spot where it could fail quite well from here, or it could close up for the day and continue up. So we've got 2 hours to go. So just looking ahead to the weekly is just pulling back in from under the from the range trend. So this is behaving like something that wants to reject off this, but we could still get a pullback today and then a move back up over the top of this close and bounce. So it's still nothing's set in stone until it's closed. And the monthly is pushing up into the resistance. We haven't hit the monthly trend yet, but given that we're up inside this whole candle, and there's nothing to really stop that from rejecting. I mean, it may not reject to its full fib level, because its rejection would be all the way down to here at 15319, but it may just do a rejection down to these range trends, which it didn't quite touch. It may reject down to so this really, it just looks a little bit trappy, like it's waiting for something. And it's just the way it's sitting here in resistance, and it's monthly resistance. So you never really expect monthly resistance to just hit and then bounce off immediately within a day, because that's just not how the sort of time scale works. But yeah, you also don't expect it to just be hovering like this. So it's definitely keeping an eye on this one. Right. And what we've got over on the safety assets is we've got what actually does look like a clear sweep of the bottom range. So we opened in between. It was a very tricky place for the candle to be yesterday because it opened under one trend and just above another, and as you can see, it just had that little tight space that it was trapped in. Now that meant it was able to push up, push down, but ultimately it's kind of come back to that area that it is, and somehow it's got to get out of that. So like it's got to either get onto the other side of this trend and move up, in which case you're going to see weakness in alts, or you're going to see it pull down a little bit, close under here, and then continue down. But this kind of deep wick down, sweep, and pull back up is the kind of thing that makes you think that they've just done a sweep and they're now going to head up to retest some of these higher levels. So if this starts to head up, then you'll find the alts take a dump, and that's what that could be working its way towards. If it just creeps up a little bit and opens the next candle on the other side of this trend, then yeah, I would be at that point thinking that we are definitely very close to finding some kind of retrace. Right, so let's have a look at these totals. So the totals are just absolutely on the fence. This is exactly what a doji candle means, really. So if that closes yellow, you could technically move the resistance trend up. If it closes blue, then you get a new support trend, and either way, it is such an indecisive candle that you wouldn't really put a whole bunch of weight into either the support trend or the resistance trend because it's just too much of an indecision candle. It's one of those ones where you could take a trade off that trend, expecting it to reject or support, and find that it just goes through it anyway because it's because this is just such a nothing conclusion. But this is probably a little bit clearer. So if we look at it without the weighting of the DXY, we spoke about this yesterday. It's gone up. It's hit the range trend. It moved the trend to the top side yesterday. And now it's basically hit both things as resistance. So it's either going to creep up just a little bit, in which case it's going to be a hard close of the break level, and that's quite bullish. You could then, the break level could try to break through these trends and continue up, or it's going to close down like this, in which case it's a hard close and nothing, and it's come from the wrong side of the lower break level down here, and you could actually see a pretty significant pullback because the trends are all above. If it doesn't flip this level at 376 into 3.76, if it doesn't flip that into support, then yeah, down and a revisit. There is the chance that it can, I think it's there. There is the chance that it can use this new trend if it does close blue and then try to bounce up again. But yeah, it's still got a trend and a range trend above it. It'll have one trend as support. It's a pretty indecisive candle. Yeah, it could go up, and a lot can change in 2 hours. If this flips into closing as a yellow candle, then obviously it's got more support and it can try to go up. So that's all that's really telling us. Just looking ahead to the weekly is currently rejecting, and it should be because it's up inside a hold level, but as you can see, it's pretty doji hold level, so it's a very indecisive one. But the break level is not indecisive, and it's currently rejecting off it. And one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to close up here, in which case it can try to use these two trends, which sort of around that 3.7 area, that 3.74 area, and then the break level is that 3.78. So it can sort of close up here and then try to use the backsides of all these things as support, and just keep going up, which is just like totally bullish market overall if it does that. It's just creating minimum retraces and then just taking bounces. But the other option is that, we've got 1 day and 3 hours on this, and it just keeps pulling back down. The absolute bearish one, of course, is that it goes down underneath the trends that it's pushed up from the other side of, and well, that'd be a pretty sizable retrace. But it would also actually be the minimum obligation of the whole candle to come back to the 3.55. So yeah, that is areas to keep an eye on if this thing starts to dump. Look for that dump to finish when it sort of gets down to this 3.55 level. Okay, BTC. Well, it moved the trend to the top. It didn't actually didn't test the new trend. It just started pulling back. It hasn't hit these break levels at all to the upside up here. So I don't know. It's not exactly very bullish looking. BTC just still looks quite weak on this time scale anyway. So we will get a trend if it closes blue. So it's kind of attempting to recover some strength. So we had this trend here, it got broken, and then we went back to this other one, this older one that was here. But what will basically happen is that will move to there if this closes blue. And so you can see we're getting into this tiny little wedge. So if this closes down at about 115.3, then it'll create the trend, but it'll open on the wrong side of the trend, and that allows it to dump. Creating a hold level in here at 115.416 would be quite bearish if it did that, because then it would have a hold level to push it down. It would be on the wrong side of the trend, and it would dump. So that's kind of what could happen here. The other side of it is it just goes up, becomes a yellow candle. That doesn't create any form of support trend then, which doesn't really help with it making decisions, because it would still be under the main trend, and it hasn't hit any of the higher break levels. So yeah, it's basically it's just rejecting off whatever lower time frame ranges were in here, around that 116.4 level. So yeah, it's just going to end up with more compression, and eventually these things just have to break. So if we look at the 2-day close today, so 2-day's going to move its trend to the top side, so that'll come up here, and that'll bring some resistance or more resistance back in around that 116 area. It hasn't hit its break level, which is at 116.984, but it is hard closing a range trend. So the compression in this would just become basically between these two trends, and one side's going to win. At the moment, it would probably have a little bit more reason to go down than up, because that tends to be what happens when you flip resistance to the top side. But it could do a sweep of it, and we've got these targets that's sort of like 117 and 118 and 119 that are in play. They've been in play for a long time, just like 247's been in play for a long time on SOL. So it is very bearish if it does a sweep, hits the targets, and then rejection and strength disappears, and then that you should be looking for a bigger dump if that kind of thing happens. But yeah, at this stage it's just moving trends, moving resistance, but actually still kind of building support. So it's just doesn't know what to do. The 4-day, same thing. It's going to relocate a trend today, so that's going to shift up to the top side. So it's all about the wick. Like if this is exactly like this when it closes around that 115.842 price, then it's going to reject off the underside of that trend, and then it's going to probably come back down to this range trend, which is down around that 113 area. Maybe it tests, because it hasn't hard closed back inside this 2-candle range either. So it's got all the reason in the world to push back down to 112.6, or even just keep going down, because it's not technically back in that range. It's just up inside there, playing around. And then of course we're going to get an 8-day close. The 8-day close is going to be the first time the 8-day trend's moved in quite a while, so it's going to shift to the top side. Same thing, if it rejects off the underside of this trend, it will also be creating this hold level at 112,500. So you're starting to see a little bit of confluence there where you've got things like the 4-day trend that could reject back to the bottom of the range, and that's around that 112,600. And now we're getting a hold level forming at 112,523. So it is definitely starting to build a little bit of confluence for a rejection back to these levels, at least. But we're still inside trends, so it can dive them and just go down and have a sweep over several days and then go back up, and I guess ultimately that would be quite bullish. If we get a big sweep to the downside, it's super bullish because it'll go back up. But if we get one to the upside first, then secure your profits and be prepared, because it's always hard to know when the cycle is ending. Okay, 16-day close today. So this is one of the time frames that is still very slowly heading back up to this 117 area. So it's got a hold level at 119, which 119,400, which should stop it. And it's got a hold level that it's bouncing off down here at 110, and its target is 117.699. So yeah, this is just on its way up and going really slow about it. It is underneath its support trend, so once it the next candle, as an example, when that opens, it will create this interior downtrend. It will be on the wrong side of the, or it'll be on the top side of the downtrend, which means it could bounce off it as support. And that's the kind of thing that can push that price up and finish off that target, hit that hold level. But when it hits that hold level, it's going to run into that other trend, in which case, there's a lot of things to reject this if it pushes up. And once this hold level down here has done its job, which is what it's going through the process of doing now, that's not going to hold it again. So like if it comes up here and rejects, you would expect a retracement to go deeper than the 110 level. Yeah, so it's definitely in an interesting spot. There is actually a range trend in there as well. There's that. So we're up on top of that. That might give it support. So it's a tough one. And 16-day candle, so it's the type of time frame that can do a big sweep and then come back up, and it has 16 days worth of bungee cord that it can run the trends on. So that's what that's showing us. The 32-day is looking relatively bearish. So what this has gone through in the last sort of 64 days is it moved the trend to the top side, it rejected off the trend, it's pushing down. Today it is going to create that downside hold level, and it is going to create a trend in here, and that's going to be around 110, and the exterior trend is going to be around 107, 106. So if it rejects off this hold level, so a little push up into that 117,499 area, if it pushes into that first and then rejects off that and starts heading to these trends, this is good and bad, because this kind of trend density is normally what creates a big bounce. So when you get trends close together like this, it's kind of like areas like this, when you hard closed all of these areas down here, you just had that huge move because you had all of these various different range trends. Everything was coming through this area. When it hard closed it, it just took off. This could do that. It's got the ability to come down, test these. It might sweep them and then go up. But it's definitely gearing to have some kind of rejection off that level into these trends. So yeah, when I look at stuff like this, I just can't understand why we haven't rejected yet. And Twitter and everything is so bullish, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just going to be up only and it's going to ignore all these hold levels, etc. Yeah, it can happen, but it just seems just seems very much like there's nothing in there that can really stop that from rejecting. It's going to have to at least reject these trends. So, and yeah, the 64-day, if it closes where it's closing now, it's pulling back underneath the trend. So that's indicative of a sweep of liquidity. It could reflect or reject, sorry, off the backside of this and then head down to either do a retest of the broken trend, because this trend I've left on here was the one broken by this candle. So it could come down and do a retest. It could go back to the main support trend, or it could even go down to the hold level, but you'd really hope it doesn't go to the hold level. That's 93,500, but it would be quite normal after sweeping the top of a trend to reject off the underside of it and then come down and look for support. So this means a move to somewhere between kind of 102 and 93. And this is really a high probability move. So just keep that in mind if you're taking out really high leverage positions, and all it takes is one unexpected tweet about 500% new tariffs or something, and the excuse then to play this out appears. And yeah, but it's BTC just won't stop looking bearish. And yeah, same thing goes on the 128-day. It's just pulling back. It's probably going to open under trend based on the gap between the candles. And yeah, 94, probably this early in the piece, maybe even 93. It's just confluent numbers, really. So yeah, that's pretty much what we've seen on BTC. And just a quick glance at the weekly. So the weekly is just, it's pushed up through so much resistance, which is ultimately seems really bullish, but it's also just so overextended, and it's just teasing with not touching that resistance trend. So yeah, it's just on a knife edge, really. It could easily pull back in the next day or so, or it could stay up here and then pop up, hit the trend, reject, and then have a lesser pullback would basically be the outcome of if it was to hover up here and close the candle up here. All right, so let's have a look at SOL. Okay, so SOL hit the daily break. It's rejected. It's found support roughly on the old trend, but it's not hard closing it or moving the trend unless that candle closes up today. So if it closes up, then it is a hard close of the break level, as well as being a hard close and a move of the trend. And then it would just be inevitable, really, for it to just push up to this 250s area. If it closes like it is here now, then effectively it's not gaining the break level as support. It's not really hard closing the trend, although it could still bounce off it again and go. It is up inside the range trend. So we've got a level down here at about 234 that it could dive down to that and bounce off that. And it would create a new general support trend, which would be here. And from where it stands, it would probably open on that trend, rather than above that trend. So it's it's kind of a catch-22, because if it pushes up enough to open above that trend, then it actually doesn't create the trend, because it'd go yellow, and then it's working off different supports. So it's in a very interesting little spot. Just as likely to reject on the next candle as it is to actually go up. Real 50-50. So then if we look at the 2-day, 2-day is kind of the same. It's pushed up through trend. It's not going to move the trend today when it closes, and at this stage it is not closing over the break level, because it's the same break level on the 2-day and the 1-day, and it hasn't quite retested the broken trend backside. So yeah, it's basically just, this could open that next candle, touch that, and travel all the way back down to 226 quite easy, or wherever that trend is, at least about 228. So 228 is the structural target. So it just almost makes you think they're just trying to get enough people to open longs and going back to that liquidity thing, there's just not a lot of people chasing this. People have either just decided, no, we're sick of getting dumped on and we're not going to chase this, or they're trying to short it and therefore it keeps going up. So yeah, they might just be hovering here and waiting. And if enough longs open, structurally, they can come all the way down to 228, and it's a move and play. And then yeah, they're not hard closing this trend, so that means where's our break level? Our break level's down here at 219. There's really nothing. So they are hard closing the break level. So they're not hard closing the trend. They're not above that break level. If enough longs come in, there's absolutely nothing to stop this time frame from just coming all the way back down to do a break level retest and you know, grab all those longs that open up. So definitely be cautious. And looking at the 4-day, so the 4-day is rejecting off the backside of the range trend. So you'd definitely be expecting this to pull back, and it's got some pretty old levels coming through here at around 228. It's overextended through this level at 223. It is moving trend today, so that can also be a bit of a bearish thing, because this will shift up to the top side here. So then if it pushes up again and hits 243, 243 is already a monthly rejection level. Now it's going to have a 4-day trend sitting there. It's already rejecting off a range trend. Yeah, the only question really is, why has it not fallen already? And I think the answer is just simply liquidity is not there to make it efficient. So the shallowest rejection that this could cope with is probably off the backside of this trend, which is around those 230s, 233, 234 area. That would be a really shallow rejection for what that's running into. There's a lot of lines there now, so that's whereas a healthy rejection on this time frame would actually be all the way down here to 210. You want it to retest these break levels, don't want it to leave them behind for later. We've already got this one down here at 191 left behind. You don't need more, so that's how that looks. So the 8-day is closing up over a really old break level. It's not hard closed, and as you can see from history, we've closed above it, you know, once here. That resulted in a drop eventually from 256 all the way down to 176. We closed over it again here. Yeah, that went to 295 and then went all the way down to 104. So it's not a hard close level. What it is doing though, which is positive, is it's bringing another hold level in here at 214. So in this case, the difference between these previous two times when we closed up over this trend is we'd already tested the hold levels all the way down here. We had nothing to support the price if it started to fall, and we got like a backside bounce, which was this level here previously. So this is, people have asked about backside, front sides, etc. in the Discord. This is an example. Price went up, came down, bounced off the backside, went up to an unsustainable move, because backsides are typically unsustainable. And then the worst thing about this is there was no front side. So the front side had already been tested. So because of that, the dump was huge, all the way down there. So the difference, and why I keep saying that SOL is actually more of a sustainable structure this time, is because we're making these hold levels and we're not testing them. We're making this one. We may or may not test it. We haven't tested this one. We have this one down here, and we have this one down here. So you can pretty much say that these levels 191 and up have actually got a lot of really good high time frame support in them now, and that support moves into that 214 area after the close of this. So yeah, if we do get a rejection and a retracement, we have got good support down below us, and it would just be a blessing to be able to long this and then run that all the way up to the next local high. So 16-day, this is moving trends today. So top side moving there, and we are closing up over a break level, and I think The one interesting thing about this time frame, we must have something in here that stopped this rejection. We have got a relatively clear rejection that should be coming off this candle in here, and we entered that here on the 13th of August. The target for this move would be, and it'll stop obviously at some trend, but the target will be this 158, unless something has already stopped it, which could be the backside of a trend. Just come on, where was that last trend? Oh yeah. So yes, looks like it could be that. So this rejection may have already played out just between the backside of the trend and the rejection level, and so that dove it down a wee bit, but it ultimately that couldn't really get any lower than 189, which makes sense. There's so much strength in 189. So assuming that rejection is now over, we move the trend to the top side, and even if we do reject off the underside of this trend, we may just find support at the break level, which is that 219 again. So yeah, so we could see a pullback to 219 based on this close. We have not hit that 247.260, which is our biggest target. That's us. Once we hit that, we actually don't have any minimum structural moves left to higher levels. So we're still going to have moves, but it's going to be between break levels, hold levels. Not that there's many hold levels left, but it's going to be break levels, hold levels, and trends basically every trade after this, because unless we do have a pullback into some kind of hold candle, we've pretty much run out of horizontal structural moves. Okay, 32-day, no trends are moving. It's hit the break, it's closing under the break, it's closing above the other 32-day break, and it's closing above the range trends. So you would expect a rejection on this back to 219 or to the trend, whichever one comes first. So if it goes sideways really slowly for a long time and just doesn't pull back, then of course the trend could take over and propel it up. If it does it in a reasonable period of time, then it could come back here to this 219.9, retest the break level, and then it comes down to whether it bounces up and then takes the other break level, hard closes at the bottom. You can still get multiple tests of these things, because so this candle closing under this break level can send it back to that level. Then if the candle goes up and closes over the top of the level that rejected it, that level is actually not hard closed because the candle started on the underside. So, but it does then hard close the level that it retested, meaning it can then dive again to that level and give you sort of like that double bottom type thing. So yeah, I mean, it's not guaranteed that we're all up only. The structure here could do all sorts of things, like we could reject, come down, go up, hard close the bottom, reject back down to retest the hard closed level, but have a rejection in this case that came from the top, so that when the candle goes up, it then hard closes at the next level and then retests and then up. So there's it's not total guarantee that we're up only, looking at some of this stuff. And it's almost better if it doesn't, because at least we can long it, short it, make some good money. 64-day, it's going to introduce a hold level down there at 164.420. It's going to close above the break level at 188. It's massively extended from its trend, and it does actually have a range trend up here at about 157, 158. So this is a little bit of a concerning one, because it could actually just push up, hit that range trend, and it is so far away from every other form of support that this is the type of structure that could actually go and retest the 180s, 190s. I don't think it will go retest that 164 level. That will be something left behind. There will be some big event or bear market or something one day, and it'll probably come and bounce off that. And the 128-day, really don't know what this is up to. It's just, as you can see, it's just sitting with the daily candle just above the trend. I mean, a daily candle being above a 128-day trend really doesn't mean anything. It's building another hold level down here at 189.27, which is that really strong area of support we have on the high time frame. And it's got a target up here of about 266 for it to, continue pushing up to. If it finds support and recovery of this trend, and it never lost that trend, so that's a really high time frame trend that's been deviated and swept, etc., but it's never been lost. So yeah, short version is we could just bounce off this and go straight to that tomorrow. It's all within the cards. The range at the moment on SOL is huge, and I don't think we've seen the top. The weekly close is going to be a real important one. We've got so many high time frame weeklies closing tomorrow, so when we get those kind of days, we typically have some pretty cool fun and some structural change. So the weekly SOL is just sitting up above its trend. Whether it pulls back down or not, don't know yet. It's sitting up above an origin level. I mean, it's just in a place where it could explode, or it can pull back down and reject. So we'll see how that closes tomorrow. But at this stage, it's looking, pretty bullish. And finally, what do we got going on over here? So TP's done on SUI, so that was 3.2424 on the monthly hold up to 3.8297. So that trade's complete now. That was a pretty good little stack of money to throw at I don't know, whatever you need to spend money on. So this might create another hold level. It's worth keeping an eye on this, because if it creates another hold level at the end of the month, there'll be another long off this candle in here. Just refine an entry, and I think we might have some kind of interior trend there as well. Yeah, we got that. So you'd have interior trend support, another horizontal level, ultimately another move. This is probably just going to keep going up to that break level, particularly if it bounces off this interior trend next month, and then it's going to run into one of these range trends up the top here, as you get closer to $5. So, if you want to take another long on this, or even if you just want to keep the long open and take some profits here, and then just set your SL at entry and see how it goes. You could just TP at the break level, maybe just take another half off there, and then just TP at one of these trends up here. So that's looking, it's just doing what it should be doing. ENA's teasing me. It is actually pulling back off the trend. So if it pulls back enough, we might long this, but not yet. I kind of want to see it come back to that 54-cent mark and meet its rejection obligation. But it probably won't, just because there is trends there. And yeah, SUI on the 1 day is going to move its trend up, so that's, so you might get a little bit of resistance there and a bit of a pushback on that. I think World Liberty Finance has already run. Yeah, it's bouncing off another hold, it's going up some more. So I never took this trade, but entry would have been on that candle there, back up to the trend, wait, and then or TP there. But it's it hasn't lost the support trend because it's been on it this whole time. So it looks like it might get back above that. If it does get back above that and you wanted to take a long, you could either wait for some kind of sweep of the trend and then a move up, or you could just long the retest of the trend and just take your TP, first TP at the break level there, and then take your second TP either at the retest up here at about 26 cents. You probably don't have to worry about any of the stuff in here because it's all kind of been retested on the way down, and you don't have to worry about that hold level. Yeah, so it'd just be break level and TP there. And it looks like what it's trying to do is, it looks like it's trying to form some kind of parallel channel. So if it, so you TP1, TP2, and then TP3 up here at about 36 cents or whatever. That's World Liberty Finance. And the other one I think we were looking at was Hype, wasn't it? Yeah, and hype looks like it's rejecting. It looks like it's done a bit of a sneaky deviation over the range trend, and it appears like it's now going back under the range trend. It could hard close under this and then fall back down into these 50s or these lower levels. So yeah, hype is really overextended. I'd just be very careful longing it at the moment. It's I think if you look at it on the weekly, it's just yeah, it's just really overextended, and you can see it starting to pull back. So there's another day to go before the weekly candle closes, and realistically this should come back to that trend. So just be careful longing that at the moment. Right, cool, that's it. Like, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff, and thanks for all the comments and the requests, and I'll keep getting those things videos done and get them pushed out, and yeah, we'll catch you again later. Cheers, bye.